Hey guys, today we're going to be doing an overview of the GoGoGadgets editor window. First thing we need to do is open it up. Okay, and the first thing we're going to have a look at is the stats at the top. And if I select some game objects here, you'll see that it gives you a total amount of game objects selected along with the total triangles that occupy these game objects. So just in this one scene alone, there's approximately 80,000. Alright, and then next, we're going to have a look at the game object search bar here. For example, if we're looking for a log, for example. Okay, and then inside it's going to give us a list of objects that it found inside of the scene. And if we're looking for this particular log, we can click on it and we'll zoom into it. And we can also toggle it on and off. If you know exactly or roughly what game object parent holds, the game object you're looking for, you can find it in the selection as well. Next we have our scene manager, which we can open externally. This way we can keep it docked. And what we're going to do first is we're going to add some scenes to it. If you want, you can adjust it yourself. We most certainly don't need 43. And we're going to add the west here to the bottom. Okay. Alright, and then next thing we're going to have a look at is this top index is what I refer to as the primary scene. And the reason for that is if you unload all, first we'll add all. Alright, and that's actually going to add all your scenes that you have in this list as additives. And as I was mentioning, this is your primary scene, and so if we unload all, it'll keep this particular scene in there. If you would like to load it as a separate scene, you can do that. You can add just the one. You can also unload just the one. And when you're working with multiple scenes, one of them need to be the active scene. When you add a game object, this is going to be the scene that it gets added to. And so we'll set our primary scene for now as the active scene. And we don't need that open anymore for the example. And we'll just close that. That'll put it back here. Next, what we're going to look at is the selection manipulation gadgets. Sometimes when you're going to save, you might accidentally push Control A. And what that does is it selects all, of course, but expands your hierarchy. And in much bigger projects, it can be very tedious and undesired to have this happen. And so to remedy that, there is now a collapse the hierarchy button here, which will collapse the hierarchy, as it says. Next, we're going to select some game objects. And what we can do is we can grab their parent by simply clicking that. You can also push the star button by default on the numpad, and it'll also go up in the hierarchy until it reaches its uppermost parent. You can also set objects active or not active simply by the click of a button. You can also deselect them all. If you only need about 50% of your selection and you're trying to select a random amount of objects at once, you can deselect them. It selects between 0 and 100, and as long as that number is less than 50, the object will remain selected. Alright. So if you see here, you can see that these game objects are not in order alphabetically. So we can actually click on the Sort Children by Name, and that will order them. Furthermore, you can right-click here and sort children by name this way as well. Now if we look under here, we can see that these game objects are not prefabs. So first we'll sort them. We'll drag in the prefab here and replace it. And we'll do the same for the round tree. And for the pine tree. Alright. Let's find there we are. Okay. So if you have a bunch of scripts, it can be tedious to remove them one by one. Sometimes it's a lot more desirable to delete everything and only keep the renderer. And sometimes you just want the transform. It's a very quick way of removing components. Okay, and the next is going to be renaming. Suppose you have a list of game objects like this that need to be renamed. Let's have a look in here. Perhaps over time you need to rename things quickly and you're using the same name to rename these things. You can simply select it here, and instead of keeping it inside of your clipboard, you can just press paste here, or rename rather. And if you need it to be renamed by number, you can do that too. Okay, and our snap to ground tool here. See here that our layer on the ground is default. So if we set this to 2 and snap it to ground, our trees will now be on the ground. However, the round trees will need a smaller number. And then our next And last selection manipulator will need to be enabled for the example. You can press F1 to toggle things on and off quickly. And escape to deselect. Okay, we're going to take our cylinder here, our lookout object, we'll just move this over here, and we're going to tell it to face towards the selected object. Or we can move it to that object, and we can also move it to and rotate it. It's important to note that the forward direction of any game object is the blue global transform indicator here. Okay, and we're going to move on to the grouping tools. So you can see here that we already have a list of dead logs. If I push Alt-G, it'll ungroup those objects. And if we select them, we want to keep it parented here to this object so it stays inside of this group. We can delete this subfolder. These are the objects that we would like to group, and we'll group it as dead logs. Okay, and then either in here, your hierarchy, or the scene, you push Ctrl-G. If you would like to use the selection name, it's going to use one of the selection that you've selected, typically the first. You can quickly select your parent object here. You can clear it, and then under randomization, select this group of objects here. We're going to sort it by name. We'll select the pine trees and the round trees. If you don't want something to be affected in its rotation, then you deselect it. And you can quickly rotate your objects. This way they're not uniform. If you'd like them to be a bit tilted while you're doing that. And keeping in mind that their base rotation is -90, so we're going to do an offset between -85 and -95. And they all have a nice random tilt. If you would like to scale them, you can simply do it that way. If you untick this, you can change their scales randomly, individually. And finally, we have our tags and layers. So if you would like to make a new tag, say we want to call all of these, or assign them with the tree tag. we can do that very quickly. And if you would like to put them back, we can reassign them as untagged here. And we can also remove tags. Same with our layers. If we would like to make these nature layer, we can apply that. May not have updated up there. We can see here that they all have the nature layer. And we can remove it. Of course, we want to set that back to default. Next, we have our list of favorites. If there are game objects that you quickly need access to, you can simply store them here in your favorites and ping them later. You can also search through your list and find them that way. Next, we're going to have a look at the notepad. If we're looking to create a new note, we can simply do so. We can save that and close it, and our notes are stored in there. We can also ping the directory here. And if there are some external notes that you would like to keep in your notepad, simply drag them into the notepad directory, press refresh, and you can store those in there as well. Next, we have our backups. It displays here the amount of time until our next save. Our autosave can have a prefix. You can set the amount of time in between autosaves. The console window can be logged and let you know that it did autosave. And if the file name or not should include the date, and if you'd like it to autosave your project. From autosaving, then you can uncheck this. You can also reset your timer, autosave now, and go to your autosave folder. If you'd like to make a scene backup, you can simply do so by pressing the Create Backup button. And each of these autosaves and backups are stored in the same folder as the scenes under an autosaves folder. The script tools allow us to find scripts that may no longer be in use, or perhaps you're searching for game objects that are using a particular script. It's also useful to find out if certain scripts are in use or not. So we have this script here. I'm going to attach it to this game object. Refresh our list, and you can see here that the script that we just added is attached to this particular game object. If we remove that component, and reselect it, it'll tell us that it's not being used. However, it did find it. Put that back on here. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to delete this. And of course, naturally, that would result in a missing script. Okay, and we can see here that it did find our unreferenced script. Next, we're going to have a look at the project history. It'll tell you the total project time and also the amount of time you've spent inside of this session. Session meaning the amount of time that your Unity editor has been opened. You can also take screenshots. If you have more than one scene open, it'll execute the screenshot in all scenes. If you're using the game view, which uses the camera inside of your scene, you'll need to set that up first. Take a snapshot. But otherwise, you can use your scene views. And finally, we have our settings. Inside of here, we can toggle the shortcut keys on and off. If you're using the white theme, it'll add a different contrast. When you're in your script tools searching for game objects, you may want to include inactive game objects when searching. What this does is it searches for the game objects, enables them to be placed into a list, and then once they're in the list, they're disabled once more and combined with all the other active objects. The reason why we do this is because natively you cannot search for inactive game objects. Okay, and these are the notepad controls. Numpad 1, Numpad 2, Numpad 3, 4, 5, which is your orthographic, or perspective, 6, which allows you to rotate the camera, 7 gives you your top view, 8 allows you to rotate up and down, along with 2. And number 9 gives you the reverse view of where you are. If you would like to change your deselect key or your select parent keys, you can do so here. And if you find yourself in some trouble with the script tools, you can quickly reset that here. So that concludes the demonstration of GoGoGadgets. Hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out in the comments. Have yourself a great day. Thank you for your time.